In 2027, the United States made a discovery that changed everything. The ability to open time portals into alternate dimensions where history unfolded in completely different ways. Some of these timelines were void of human life, worlds where plagues like the Black Death had wiped out humanity entirely. To a planet on the brink of environmental collapse and resource exhaustion, these silent Earths offered hope and opportunity. Operation Anubis was launched with a bold objective: travel to one such dimension, arrive on August 14th, 30 BC, and secure an area of ancient Egypt known to contain rich oil reserves. A heavily armed military force was deployed through the portal on June 30th, prepared for a mission in an uninhabited world. But something went wrong. Though they landed on the correct date and in the correct location, they had not arrived in a lifeless dimension. Cleopatra had just died 2 days prior, and Egypt stood at the edge of war, with Rome and Persia's forces ready to clash. The sudden appearance of a modern military force plunged the ancient world into shock and fear. Perceiving the Americans as a divine or demonic threat, the Romans and Persians formed an unlikely alliance and turned their combined strength against the intruders. The battle that followed was so devastating, so utterly catastrophic, that it was erased from all records, ignored by every timeline. What began as a mission of salvation became a forgotten war, one too terrible for history to remember. The following footage reveals the events of that horrific day, when 1 million ancient warriors clashed with 3,510 seemingly untouchable United States soldiers. The United States soldiers won the battle, if victory is what you would call it. The clash was not a contest, but a storm of fire and thunder against blades and bone. The battlefield, once golden with sand and shadowed by empires, became a graveyard soaked in silence. 1 million warriors of the ancient world fell beneath the fury of modern war, their courage no match for rockets, bullets, and firepower born of a future they could never comprehend. But victory came at a cost no rifle could prevent and no satellite could measure. Of the 3,510 sent through the portal, only 1,236 remained. Bloodied, broken, and burdened by what they had done, they disappeared into the mountains beyond Egypt's horizon, never to be seen again. Some say they perished in exile. Others whisper they found a new purpose beyond time. But the truth remains buried beneath centuries of dust and denial. No monument marks the battle. No scroll records the slaughter. Only the wind remembers their names. And in the silence that followed, time closed its wound, leaving behind a single truth. Victory is not always survival, and some wars should never be remembered. Thank you for watching.